Buju, Brad, could you please introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from?
Anin, Najake Awasing and Dijnakaz, Magizi and Dudane, Mrs. Zagaigan and Dunjaba. My name is Bradley Harrington, and I'm joining from the Mille Lacs Band reservation on the west side of Mille Lacs Lake here today.
Thank you for joining us. How are you doing? How is the family doing?
I'm doing quite well. We just got done with our ceremony time. Did great. Kids did well, and now that we've ended, they've scattered about to go visit their friends who they missed.
Mm. And how long are you out doing ceremony?
This session was about 10 days.
Mm.
10 days, yeah.
Oh. And how do you feel when you get done? You seem very serene.
Yeah. Well, I was quite tired. We got done on Saturday. I did my best to do absolutely nothing yesterday, although we did go watch a movie. And then today, just a couple little errands, and then did some little bit of time with the band on the boards that I sit on. But yeah, most of all, I feel after the rest anyway,
Hmm.
you know, nice and let go of a bunch of stuff I didn't need to carry around.
Hmm. And what movie did you see?
We went and watched Toy Story 5.
Oh, they're on five now. Okay.
Yeah, turning into a soap opera.
Wonderful. And how are you and the family doing?
We are doing great. We just graduated one this year. We got two of them coming up next year. And then the younger ones, they're starting to get into their sports habits. And so, yeah, after getting three of them through high school sports here, I'll have a few more getting ready to start. So it's always fun.
Wow. That's a lot of juggling. I know with our kid, I mean, he does like archery, he does music, and a couple other things, and that's like a lot already. So I can't really imagine um, doing so much more than that. That's
Mhm.
must have like a very well thought out calendar.
Well, about as thought out as one can get. The older ones, they're three sport athletes usually,
Mm.
and um, one of the daughters, the older daughter, she joined a AAU basketball team, so that was quite interesting. One of the younger daughters, she joined a junior Olympic volleyball, and both of these were going on over the summer or the winter, my fault.
Mm, mm.
Both of these were going on over the winter, and yeah, it was really quite interesting. So, but lots of fun, lots of fun. They learned a lot, and I can tell they got a lot better. So,
Great. Um, so Bradley, is there anything that you are thinking about these days or concentrating on that you'd like to share?
um, so after nearly a decade of high-level tribal and state government work, I recently resigned my position back in February to focus more on language and culture. So we had started a nonprofit called the Get In Waywananon Foundation, something I worked on over COVID, which was getinwaywananon.com, which I was just trying to, we'll work on something. My access to language during COVID was quite tough, much like anybody. And uh, access to language resources that uh, just a regular person can understand. Because to use some of the resources online, you have to learn how to speak linguistics. So that's the terminology such as preterite, conjunct, what's dubitative, all that other fun stuff. Like what does verb animate intransitive
Mm,
actually mean, you know?
like really technical terms.
Yeah, yeah, and they're all
Mm.
linguistical terms, which is, the a good bridge for us because without it, we would have been absent a lot of good resources. But now today it's like, how do we connect just a common person who may work their day job, kids events? How can we connect them to the language without having them teach linguistical terminology? So I was trying to fill that gap, and over time, well, what, 5 years, 4 years or so, we decided to put together a nonprofit and focus on language resource creation and hosting and access. And our our main three pillars are resources, access to resources, and opportunities to use resources. So that's what's keeping me busy nowadays. Now I'm fighting the urge to get back into work. For one, healthcare is a tough one. So I'm,
Mm.
switching from union-backed job provider healthcare to now navigating uh, the state offered healthcare and so on. But
Hmm.
healthcare is almost a big one to put me back into the workforce. But I'm trying to hang in there.
Wow, I imagine. So you moved from, working for the state and then, hopping into, language and culture and the foundation that you're building. Uh, why did you make that change?
So I started my language journey about 2010, and during the teens, my language really took off, and it was because I was able to have access to elders, Larry Smallwood, Lee Staples, Joe Navy Sr., a bunch of others, and Doug Sam. I like to talk about Doug a lot. Uh, so I had access to them. So when people come up to me and ask me, "Hey, how I want to be able to speak just like you're able to speak. What did you do? How can I go do it?" And um, I can't suggest them to do it my way because the access to the resources that I had access to aren't there. So along with my language journey, I also learned how to perform ceremonies such as namings, dish settings, sending off tobacco, and funerals. So as some of these elders they're getting sick, like Larry passed 2017, all was on. Lee was encroaching into 70s, and then COVID happened. We had them all stay home, and a couple of us second language people picked up the funerals. And I've been doing funerals now for 6 years since 2020. And 2024, I started being asked to do more funerals, namings, and other ceremonies. And then 2025, I was asked to do more and more communities, not just Mille Lacs, so Leech Lake, Fond du Lac, St. Croix. Recently, I've been out to LCO, and so on. So there I was working a full-time state job, which was kept me on the road a lot, fairly busy. The spirits made it so to where I was usually able to accept tobacco without too much interference. But that started meeting up the my job and my community responsibility started overlapping a lot more often at the end of 2025. And so I decided that 2026, I didn't want to have to pick between two. I was very passionate about my work and I was very passionate about my community responsibility. And I didn't want to keep being put in a position to have to choose between the two because it's a disservice to both. So I had to give one up. And I'll always choose the language over um, the job, right? So.
You talked about going to, being asked to go to other communities. What's that process like? And you know, leaving Mille Lacs and going to these different communities and being mindful of their own,
Hmm.
their own values and things like that. How does that process?
Yeah, so what I tell them is I can only bring what I was taught. Um, but I also want to be mindful that there may be community, sometimes practices, sometimes even family practices. So if they ask me like, what do we do about, let's say the dish, right? I'll ask them, I was like, what do you recall them doing when you were younger? What do you recall your older relatives doing when you were younger? And if they remember, I'll be like, encourage them to do that, do what your relatives did. Do whatever you can remember. And if they can't remember, I'll offer them a few things that I've seen. Larry and Obazan, they were traveling to many different communities, and I was very fortunate enough to be able to see different practices happening out there. And I'll be like, this is what I see done in Mille Lacs. This is what I've seen done elsewhere. Whatever makes your heart happy, but I'll encourage you, if you don't know, ask your community, and usually they're able to find something.
Great. Uh, so let's see here. We talked to you February of 2022. I think you went through a lot on your sobriety journey, but feel like it's worth asking, how that's going and what now, 4 years from when we
Hmm.
last spoke. How's that going?
Oh yeah, it's going pretty good. I recently went up and did a talk, shared my ceremonial journey during recovery up in Red Lake at a walleye roundup, they call it. They're camping out at a resort near Red Lake up there. That was really well. I just got passed back in April, so it'll be 17 years of non-usage, sober, clean, whatever term you decide to use. I haven't used any substances since 2009, so 17 years in recovery. Um, my giving back, uh, I've been able to volunteer more often in the prison system, so I've been able to go in monthly now to do their sweat lodges, and in doing so, I was able to, share a little bit, little that I know, to them. How I think of it is like I try to be the person I wish I had when I was in prison, and so I try to share that. And think I've named over 10 of them now, in prison. So at least they're getting out with their names, and or or they're in there with their names, and they can build their relationship and with the spirits and whatever it is that they're doing. So that's all part of my giving back, right? Being that uh, being that part that I wish I had in the beginning of my recovery.
Thanks for sharing, Bradley. Do you feel like it helps you it helps you as well, um,
Hmm.
working and volunteering in the prison system?
Yep. Before I got out, and this is said quite often by people getting out, is that they want to help, give back, and but very few do it. Like it's extremely hard. I've been trying to find additional volunteers to go in, um, and have yet to myself. There's been one or two others that went in that I don't know. But yeah, trying to find additional help. But for me, being able to give that back, how I view it is uh, kind of like an ecosystem. What I give out eventually would come back and help me. You can't keep what you are unwilling to give away type of mindset. And, if I'm able to help, just one person in there, that's, one person who may go on to, help someone else. And the whole chain of, passing it on has started. So, that could have been my purpose. One of my purposes here while walking this earth. And um, I feel when I get done, right, I feel like, I accomplished something that I know is going to happen again. But, for that day, I know that I went in and I was there. Man, I few times there we packed over 35 guys in a sweat lodge.
Oh.
So, I feel like being there for 35 guys who normally don't have anybody show up for them. It can be life changing for them, even though they're locked up.
Mhm. Mhm. Were you like ready to go, ready to do it, to volunteer at a prison, doing ceremony, or did you have some hesitation? I imagine it must be a little
Mhm.
difficult, or was it not?
For me, I knew I wanted to go back, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't just go back empty-handed. And with the DOC rules, I couldn't go back until I was off parole anyway, so that would have put me in 2017. So I just went and learned all that I could.
Mm.
And then when it finally came around time to be able to go back in, I actually asked before maybe a year and a half before I was even eligible to go back in. I started, writing emails to some of the staff that were in that treatment program, to the assistant warden. I'll be like, hey, I've been out. It's been almost 5 years. I got no violations during my parole. I've learned how to do this. I learned how to do that. I just want to come in and give back. In 2017, while I was still on parole, they let me go back in and do a talk. They didn't let me back in for another 5 years after that, 2022, when they let me back in to go to a graduation ceremony. And then yet there was 3 years after that where they finally let me go back in for a sweat lodge. So it was close to a 10-year process from the first time I went in to being able to go in as a regular volunteer. And I kept pushing. I kept pushing. The chaplain there was very helpful, very willing to share. The staff, as they got to know me, they've, been more open. And yeah, so
Well,
I'll be 10 years. I've been going in here in about March.
wow. It's hard for me to comprehend how far along we are in years. When I saw, we talked in February 2022, I'm like, oh, that was like 2 years ago, right? That
Yep,
was not. That was longer. That was for more than 4 years ago. That
yep,
is tough to comprehend. Time just keeps going.
yep. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of time going by, it has been 250 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed. Bradley, you wrote a piece for the Inaajimowin or the Mille Lacs newspaper called 250 Years of U.S. Occupation. I tell you what, the headline caught my eye, and I knew I wanted to chat with you about that a little bit. So here we are in July, basically. Um, can you say a bit about what inspired you to write a piece with such a headline?
hmm So, in my quest to learn Ojibwe, I learned why I didn't know it, why my parents didn't know it, what happened. And then also I learned more history, right? I learned about, more about Christopher Columbus because of all the Columbus Day information that comes out all the time, all the information that comes out about Native American Heritage Month and so on, right? Lots of information that we're able to get, and going to college and other classes, I was able to learn, keep on learning and history wise, right? And I started thinking, I was like, why is the United States the governing body here, right? We'll normally, you know, point off to the Revolutionary War. Oh, because they beat England, right? And the Revolutionary War. Well, what gave, why was England the governing body around here? Well, also France and a good chunk of Minnesota down to Louisiana. But in my quest to learn more and more about treaties, culture, history, prophecy, ceremony, uh, and then now I started seeing marketing around celebrating 250 years. And I was like, what are we celebrating, we're turning a blind eye to what America actually is. They're gonna go and say they stood up for their rights as people. They stood up to the monarchy, a king, all this bravado. But all in all, it was just to develop a consumerism society so an elite few were able to be rich. So I was thinking about what to write, and I drive a lot, so I listen to the radio, I listen to other recordings that I got, and I try to think about what I got to write every month because I write a column every month, and I try not to write the same thing over and over. And I was listening to, I think it was NPR, and they're doing something about 250 years of freedom or whatever. And I even think they highlighted a special Mille Lacs, or maybe, I can't remember, but I don't know, whatever. So I was like, 250 years, it's like 250 years of US occupation if we're gonna use the same terminology as the Hawaiians use. The Hawaiians don't use any other terminology other than the U.S. occupation of the Hawaiian Islands. While we're in a U.S. occupation of, a good chunk of North America here, and how the United States was able to gain the governing authority over these lands is based off of a Supreme Court ruling in the 1800s that challenged the United States, and it was part of the what do they call those? Oh shoot, I can't remember the name of that judge. There's a trilogy of court rulings in the 1820s, 1830s. I'll probably think of it as I'm talking, but it referred to the United States gaining authority because they beat Britain, who staked the claim as part of the doctrine of discovery. Well, who gave power to the doctrine of discovery, right? It was a papal decree. The Pope just went and declared that any land that is uninhabited by non-Christians is quote unquote discovered by a European nation that has adopted Christianity and became a Christian nation. They now have the right to govern that land. So that's like thinking of it in reverse. That's like an Ojibwe spiritual leader telling the rest of the Ojibwe, anybody who doesn't practice Medewan customs, you all can claim that land. First off, you got to have a heck of an army, right? Because that's what the Europeans came here with, and they're also happening around that same time were inquisitions, right? So had a good few decades of blood, unmerciful actions, human to human, and all that just came about in what was coined as the New World. And so that's how I got to thinking of it. Uh, they're really trying to amp up this July 4th here, and I was thinking on there's a whole parallel story. Well, there are plenty of parallel stories, but what 250 years of America, United States being, and I just wanted to share a little bit of what it can be like from a Anishinaabe perspective.
That was Chief Justice John Marshall.
Yep, the Marshall Trilogy. And I
Yeah,
believe it's Johnson v. McIntosh, where it says that since the United States was the political successor from England who claimed the land, that uh, the United States now has that due to the doctrine of discovery and England using that to claim the land. I should freshen up a little bit.
Well, and part of that is even written into, in a way, is written into the Declaration of Independence, referring to Native people, Indigenous people as merciless
Hmm.
Indian savages.
Yeah, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, anybody listening to this, I'll strongly encourage you to read all of it. It is basically a list of grievances of King George, and it's a propaganda document that was used to try to rile everybody up. They didn't, I don't believe at the time they had 30% of the population totally convinced that a revolution was the way to go. So they still had to try to rile everybody up. One of the things in the Declaration of Independence is, which is almost a response to King George's proclamation from 1763. One part of that proclamation says anything west of those mountains over there, what are they, the Appalachian Mountains? Smoky Mountains? They're around that area. Anything west of the Appalachian Mountains was Indian land. That the term uh, for indigenous title, Aboriginal title, was starting to be coined quite a bit around then. And so 1763, King George said you can't claim that land. Only the king can expand the kingdom, even though they just fought a French and Indian war for that land that would get them to the Mississippi River. The king went and told them that they couldn't go and claim it. They couldn't go and make deals about it. So that was one of the other reasons why the Declaration of Independence, and it was written in there that the King George was riling up the Indians who know nothing but warfare, and they're merciless Indian savages that would kill anybody for no
Do you mind if
reason.
I read that passage just real
Oh,
quick? The He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
yeah. If that doesn't rally you up, I don't know what would. So King George rallying up the Indians. They can't go and claim the land that they just fought. They fought the colonists of the British colonies there fought the French and Indian War. The king tells them they can't go claim that land that they just fought for, and yeah, that definitely would spark a Declaration of Independence.
Hmm. So, 250 years, complicated history there. Um, and thank you for sharing from your perspective, Bradley. I think um, a lot of people would appreciate hearing that. So, Chimigwech.
Yeah, Miigwech, greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you wrote this because, when this anniversary comes up, you you do feel that conflicting emotion. But I think people need to dive in a little bit deeper, and this article helps that process. So thank you, Chimi Buech, for that. I did, you do touch on it, but and it's a big question, but like what would meaningful reconciliation look like as we, mark this 250 years, acknowledgement, reconciliation? How does that, what does that look like to you?
hmm Um, I think reconciliation is going to take longer than the oppression. We're coming up on over 500 years of it, 500 years of oppression. So if we look at any studies out there where you can take 10 wonderful, beautiful things, one negative thing can destroy all those 10 things. And then I'll take 50 more wonderful, beautiful things to overcome that one negative thing. If we apply that to time, 500 years of one thing, oppression, genocide, and so on. Uh, how much time is reconciliation really going to take, right? Um, I think to start off, if we can just have it be basic, like it doesn't even have to be biased one side or another, that, regular history lessons in school. I think that can be the start of it, and then the future can decide what that next step can be. I think if we just learn what really happened unbiasedly, plain and simple, the next generation can figure out what to do with that information. And I think that can set us on a path of reconciliation.
So much. Well, yeah, what do you got?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you very much. I know we're at time. Um, and, is there anything else you'd like to share, Bradley, before we say good?
If you want to further your knowledge around it, I highly suggest actually reading Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, Papal Decree, mainly the Doctrine of Discovery, and an additional one called the Northwest Ordinance. So that told how the French and Indian War territory was supposed to be established in the States. And that should give you an understanding on how westward expansion kicked off and what was being used to help rile people up in order to expand the kingdom, right? So also, shameless pitch. Please view the getinwaywenanon.org website. Feel free if you're able to contribute. We have landed one grant that we're trying to figure out what to do with the money. It was an unrestricted grant for the Mille Lacs Band Foundation, and we're trying to make Ojibwe language available, accessible, and the opportunity to use it in the Great Lakes region. So, miigwech.
Miigwech, Brad.
Mitch, have a good night. Thank you so much for your time.
Well,
Such
Brad Harrington,
yeah.
Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe Citizen.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he writes that column for the Ojibwe Inaajimowin, the Mille Lacs newspaper. And, some really good things to think about. I think, yeah, we could all use the opportunity to read some of those founding documents
Yeah.
because, gosh, I feel like we know them, but do we?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to say is that, we can feel these conflicted emotions, but we can go a little deeper than that and kind of read up on it and really understand uh, the scope of all of this. So I appreciate him for getting that out there and to the awareness of the community. So yeah. So yeah, Chi Miigwech to Bradley Harrington. I'm Cole Primo.
and I'm Leah Lem. Miigwech for listening.
Gigawatmin.
Gigabobamin. You're listening to Native Lights, where Indigenous voices shine. Native Lights is produced by Minnesota Native News and Ampers with support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.